this Buy America stuff is such old hat. And I understand why it is popular. I understand why it sounds popular. I understand why it sounds good. Of course, we should, buy from our own and all that kind of thing. And I want to be clear, I am not as purist on this kind of thing as some people are. I am much more sympathetic to the idea of, like, if you live in Springfield, Illinois, buying from your local community. I think that kind of stuff makes a lot of the emotional appeal there makes a lot more sense to me than sort of at the macroeconomic scale of Buy American in federal contracting and all this kind of stuff. I'm also partly for political realism's sake, but also partly for national security reasons. I'm open to and at the margins in favor of some of these things in things like defense contracting, even in agriculture. I'm here to speak to an agricultural group. At the margins, I'm okay with things that would maintain our capacity of self-sufficiency in the production of agriculture. But one way to think about it is, like, we have a Buy America program when it comes to sugar in this country. And it's the Florida sugar subsidy, which Marco Rubio has fought for, which every Florida politician has fought for. And it's garbage, right? Growing sugar in Florida is more expensive than growing it in all sorts of other places. And we, not to get all Mansur Olson on everybody, but, he was the guy who coined the phrase or the concept of concentrated benefits and diffuse costs. It costs everybody a little more money to buy Florida sugar, but it delivers massive profits to Florida sugar producers. At least that was the case. I don't think we've done anything about Florida sugar subsidies in the last few years since I looked at this. It would be sort of, and to have sugar subsidies in America is like having citrus fruit subsidies in Canada. There are probably a handful of places that can grow, lemons and oranges and all that kind of stuff. But is it really the highest, best use of Canadian tax dollars to be growing stuff in that climate? And, while the Florida climate is fine for sugar, there's just not enough room to grow the sugar to meet demand here. And it's basically, a law that says we're gonna charge everybody more to benefit a handful of people. That's how I view. But on the CHIP Act stuff about building a high end semiconductor plant in the United States, and why are they still semi? We've been building semiconductors for all my life. When can we get the full conductors? But we've learned with the supply chain stuff and with the China tensions that having all of our eggs on the island of Taiwan when it comes to the high-end stuff doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I have no problem with, at the margins, figuring out ways to give us some durability and self-sufficiency when it comes to critical national security type stuff. But I would err on drawing that line really narrowly. Like, we should be able to build fighter jets in this country, or at least get fighter jets, the parts we need for fighter jets, from very friendly countries that we would have a hard time imagining going to war with, right? We want supply chains for the crucial national security stuff embedded with either on our own soil or among nearby allies. And I think when you look at how there are so many interesting new lessons or old lessons being relearned about logistics and supply lines, not just from the pandemic, but really from the war in Ukraine and the taking seriously the possibility of war in the Taiwan Straits, getting all that stuff together, even if there's an added economic cost to it, makes a lot of sense to me. Or at least I am definitely open to the arguments, and you got to kind of look at it closely because that's part of the problem. Everybody ends up wanting to make some sort of national security argument for if the exception to free trade principles is going to be national security, then all of a sudden every single widget and doodad in this country is going to be claimed to be essential to national security. You know, there's this debate about whether or not Chinese and other countries can buy American farmland. And, you know, I'm looking into some of this stuff because of the talks I got to give next day or two. And the thing is like, that doesn't bother me at all. First of all, from a trade perspective, if Chinese firms own American farmland and want to cultivate it as farmland and sell those products, that is probably going to be a pretty good bulwark against a trade war with China over agricultural goods, because it's going to be China's own firms going. I think a lot of that Belt and Road mercantilist stuff that China's been doing for the last 30 years doesn't make a lot of economic sense. But if they want to do it, and if that's a way to sort of hedge against trade barriers, then I think it's fine. But people who say we're going to lose the ability to control our land in a time of war or anything like that, I'm sorry. Like, if we go to war with China, I suspect that the Chinese held farmland in the United States will not be seized and exported to China anytime soon. And maybe after the war, there will be some court cases about, you know, unlawful takings or repatriation funds or reimbursements or whatever. That's fine. But like, if that land is producing wheat during the World War III with China, that wheat ain't going to Beijing. So like, who cares if China owned it?